Hi there, I'm Gogo and today's guest is Jamie Gruber. I actually personally know him. I've been in his house in Michigan when he used to live in Michigan, but today he lives in the Dominican Republic. Raise your hand, and I can't see you, but mentally I can. Raise your hand if you ever thought about just leaving it all behind, pack it all up, and move off to an island and live your best life. Well, that's what we're going to learn about today. We're going to learn about how he lives the millionaire life on an island, and let's see what that's like. Come on, listen in.
Welcome to Gogopreneur, where Gogo Bethke, your host, interviews badass rock star entrepreneurs of the world, figuring out who they are, how they got to where they're at, and the lessons they learned along the way so you can learn those lessons and turn it into money. Let's go get 'em.
Hi, Jamie.
Hello. There we go. How are you?
Thank you so much for making it today. I'm so
Of
excited
course.
to get to interview you.
No, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, how is island life?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Today's a little foggy, but otherwise it's pretty it's pretty nice.
So, I'm excited to have you because I feel like I watch all of these like get off grid kind of shows sometimes with entrepreneurship being a little hard on us. Sometimes I'm like, F it, I'm just throwing in the towel. I'm moving someone off grid. Everybody lose my number. And you did just that. Not everybody lose my number, but you are living your best life on the island life. So I wanted to interview you for that. Originally, you and me met in Michigan. I remember standing for like a hot 2 minutes in your kitchen, right? And so let's go back. Who is Jamie Gruber? The idea of this show is to get to know who you are, who you've been, right? Like what kind of life lessons you went through from childhood to have the mindset that formed you and your success today. And then the idea is by the end of the show, which we hopefully get to in like 45 minutes or so, to kind of just paint a beautiful picture of what all those life lessons took you at and what life is like today as a very successful entrepreneur. So can we start at the basics of who is Jamie and just kind of walk us through a little bit of your childhood?
Sure. Yeah. Grew up on Long Island, New York. Originally, my family moved to another part of New York later. Kind of a traditional home. Two older sisters, mom and dad, married to this day, 52 years actually, I think, at this
Oh,
point.
that's
So,
awesome.
yeah, very stable household, middle class upbringing. Dad was a plumber, mom was stay at home. She got a job later when all of her kids, all of us were more self sufficient. But yeah, I guess the education was never a highlight. It was never really a big thing promoted by my parents, which I actually really appreciate because I don't love our education system. And
Yeah.
hard work and perseverance. No victim mindset. That was really pushed heavily in my household. As I grew up, though, I think my parents' view on life was always, how does everybody else feel about you? So you get the job. Is the boss, do they like you there? I would hear that all the time. In school, does your teacher approve of you? My parents wouldn't really care about anything going on in school, but when the report card came, if it wasn't, to a point where I was being perceived well, meaning my grades weren't great, we'd have the flare up of me being yelled at, and, da, 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 and then it would all calm down until the next quarter when the report card came out. So appearance and pleasing others was a big part of my childhood and my upbringing. So as I got to an age where I had dreams and ambitions, I wanted to be in broadcasting, do NFL games and all of that in high school. But I quickly abandoned that the moment I realized how hard it would be. And I went to traditional route of getting a corporate gig, move up the ladder. Do they like you there? Please the bosses, do whatever they say, and just sort of continue to make more money and have more status within that company. So I did that. So 21 years old, I took a job with a large insurance company as a claims adjuster. I quickly climbed the ranks. Within a couple of years, I was a supervisor. A couple of years after that, I was a manager. Then I took a higher level position in Boston 4 or 5 years later, and then eventually moved to Michigan, where I met you in 2017 for an executive level job. And when I made that move in 2017, it was about 7 or 8 years in the making of me really going for that job. That was the job. It paid big money, big equity, big bonus, $500,000 a year total compensation package. So excellent job, big corner office, the whole nine, everything everybody, quote unquote, dreams of if they have the corporate life. But as soon as I got it, and as soon as I moved to Michigan, which I love Michigan, by the way, but so nothing to do with the area. As soon as I got that job, though, shortly after the new shine of it wore off, I was hollow. I was miserable. And I didn't realize, life lesson, that I was looking for this job as the thing that was going to fulfill what I didn't recognize was this emptiness in me. So I just sort of put my head down for 7, 8 years in my corporate life, feeling something lacking and thinking, I know what it is. I don't have the right job. Once I get that job, that'll do it. And as soon as I got it, I always say like my ego and my authenticity sort of went at it at that point. My ego was driving the ship. My authenticity is like, this wasn't it. Not what we were supposed to be doing. So that year, it was 2017, 2018. I really, really struggled, went through depression, couldn't sleep, all of that. Because now here I am in Michigan, away from everybody I know, making a good living. Wife doesn't work, one kid, one on the way, feeling really trapped, but knowing I can't sustain this. I can't do this for the next 20 years. I have to do something different. So that kind of brings me to today, and I'll pause there for a moment. But that's the biggest life lesson for me was the in recent memory was external validation just doesn't work, and the life lesson I've had in unpacking my childhood and everything is I really everything I had done up to a certain point was about pleasing others. That was my number one objective. What does everyone else think? And I've started to shed that a few years ago. I don't know if I'll ever fully shed it, but I've gotten
But
better.
that's so hard though, because especially if you now want to do what your soul is calling you to do, right?
Yeah.
But in order to do that, you have to make a big change. And if your whole life was based on what other people think, then now probably one of the biggest questions is what do people going to say? What are they going to think if you make this change? Right. So how did you get through how much soul searching and how did you do your soul searching? Because I like to say your ego is not your amigo,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that your ego in the background is still talking to you, even though your soul is talking to you at the same time. How do you shut one up over the other? And what did it require for
Oof.
you
All right. I'll
to
try to
do
be
that?
succinct with this a lot. So I agree with you. I think that fear of failure is the surface level fear. What really is below fear of failure is fear of being judged for that failure. In other words, fear of what other people think. So completely agree on that. I did a lot of work on ego. So let me kind of unpack this. The first thing I did was take some action. You know, at 40 years old, 38 years old at the time, whatever it was like, all right, I have to do something. And real estate investing made sense. It was practical. It was explainable to those who might judge. You know, you buy a house or two, people are like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like I should do that. Good investment. You start buying a few more houses and people start like, what are you doing here? You're not going to keep this job? Like what's going to happen? So that's the
Yeah.
point at which I decided, okay, now I see what I need, and that is I need a different kind of community. So I have a great group of remember when people. They know me for who I've been. So when I start to depart from that version of me, they want to pull me back. Like, whoa, where are you going? We know who you are. We've seen you for 30, 40 years. We know exactly who you are, and you're doing this other stuff. That's not who you are. Come back with us. Come back with us. I needed imagine when people. I needed people that don't care who I've been or what I'm even doing now, but to say, where are you going? And the moment you deviate from that version of you, a year, 2, 3, 5 year down the road version of you, we're going to jump in then because that's not who you say you were going to become. So joining masterminds, getting into communities, that was step number one for me. Step number two was really diving deep on, I guess, getting silent and getting clear on what my inner voice was telling me. And that's a few different things that I did there. The first was we sort of tripped, my wife and I, over this concept of solitude for a weekend, call it a solo weekend. This idea of like just getting off the grid for a few days, go to a hotel, go in the woods, whatever it is that serves you, but just shut it down, have an intention for that weekend or that 2-3 day period, and just sort of be silent, not on the phone, not talking to people, not watching TV, just staring at the ceiling, meditating, relaxing, decompressing, and then journaling out whatever comes up in those sessions. And with an intention, by the end of the weekend, you start to really hear that little voice inside of you. You know, you start to really hear that your soul speaking. Like when you're in silence, you can hear what's inside. When everything's busy, all you hear is fear. So getting
Yeah.
past the fear and getting to the root of what it was one. And then I took it a step further, and this might be off, way out there for some people, but I went through
Not for me.
a psychedelic session. So I did psilocybin.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
psilocybin for me was the ability for me to see the thing that was holding me back was my relationship with my ego. I felt like, to your point, ego is not your amigo, and I agree with that. Anything that's negative that you've done is driven by ego, 100%. At the same time, we all have it, and we need to learn how to embrace and partner with it.
Yeah.
So my ego in this learning that I did felt suppressed. Like, hey, man, I've driven the results that you've gotten that you like, but I'm always told that I'm your enemy. So repairing my relationship with my ego through therapy, psychedelics, all of that, that was another big change for me so that I could get a little bit closer to that little inner voice and hear it for the first time and also know how to get back to it when I need to.
Yeah, I also feel like I totally agree with you. I also feel like there is a place and time for an ego, right? Because that's what drives us. That's what actually allows us to reach those goals because that's if you're looking forward to that thing at the end, which is feeding the ego, right? Um,
100%.
so so you sat down, you listened, the little voice is the little monkey's talking, the internal voice, right, is talking. Then what?
The internal voice is telling me that it's time to go. So on a trip to Florida in COVID, at this point, I had built about 41 units of real estate and I had built a mastermind community of my own in partnership with one I was a part of. So I had these
And
things
that's where I met
percolating.
you, is we met through M1, correct? If I remember
Correct, correct.
correctly.
So
Yeah,
I built
yeah.
one called Gobundance Emerge, which was essentially a new partnership for Gobundance. So that plus the real estate was sort of percolating. Now it wasn't at the place of replacing $400,000 a year in income. Not even close, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But on a drive to Florida, my wife and kids flew down there during COVID. We went for a month when I still had my job. I drove. So I took the dogs and toys in a minivan, and 3 days later, I'm in Florida. But on that drive, same thing, solitude. After a while, there's only so many podcasts I can listen to or phone calls I can make. And it's just my mind and the road. And literally, like back of the napkin, listening to that little voice that I had worked on starting to hear and uncover, there was this sense of like, wait a minute, you've got some savings, you make some passive income. It's not enough to replace what your expenses are at this point, but gives you more runway. But more than that, you got a belief in really what you're creating here, both in the real estate space and in the sort of community building space. So I think it's time to jump. When I got about 2 hours from my destination in Florida, I got a call from a guy I worked with in Boston on a Saturday, and I haven't talked to this guy. I mean, he's a nice guy, but we were coworkers. That was it.
Yeah.
He calls me. I'm like, wow, that's weird. So I pick up. He says, hey, I wanted to let you know because I know you guys work together and everything. This guy Paul that we worked with, who was same level as me, a few years older, 2 sons like I have, all of that. And he went into the hospital last night with chest pain, and he never came out. So
Mm.
47, 48 years old. And that in that moment was like, I was pretty sure I'm ready to make a move here. I'm going to take a chance on me. And that was a moment where it was like, it's time. So I got to Florida. We did our month there. I came back and I resigned from my job in March of 2021.
And was your wife supportive of the idea, or
Yeah, she
was there
was. She
another?
No, no, she was. My wife, God bless her, she came from humble beginnings here, actually, in the Dominican Republic. So for her, she doesn't want to step back. But the worst case scenario in my mind and the worst case scenario in her mind are two different things, right? I come from this stable two parent household, always ticking up every year, right? Every year's a little better than the other one. You never go backwards. My wife's like, what? We get a 2-bedroom apartment. Who cares, right? Like we can get jobs for 80 grand a year if we really needed to. But
Yeah.
happiness, my happiness, she could see how much I was suffering. So she was very supportive.
So then how did the idea of moving to Dominican Republic came?
Anchored in the vision that I created early on. So we talked about, I get this big job. I'm in this depressive state for a year and a half. What would I even do if I didn't have this job? I don't want to go work for another insurance company. So all of that was
Yeah.
like 2 years, right? At a certain point when I found real estate, then it was like, wait a minute, man, if I really dive into this, I could do something. But why? Like, what do I want? And I created this vision, which was to travel 3+ months with my family anywhere in the world. That was the vision. Travel 3+ months with my family anywhere in the world. So that North Star was enough to kind of keep me going as I felt silly sometimes, building this little community on the side. Like you're an executive. You're building a community and buying duplexes. Like you're an executive with an insurance company. So when that little voice would come up, that drove me enough, that North Star. So when I quit, this was again, March 2021, it was really like, wow, I can do this. I can actually travel 3+ months with my family anywhere I want to go. And we would do like longer trips here and there, but not until January 2022, we came down to the Dominican for 1 month. And while we were here, we're watching our kids play with my wife's cousins' kids. So they're little cousins. They don't speak the same language, but they're still playing and interacting. It was like, how cool would it be if they were able to learn the language, learn the culture, so on and so forth. So rather than 3 months, we just said, why don't we just move here for a year? So August 2022, on the 23rd of that month, we hopped a flight and came here for what was supposed to be a year, but we're going on year 2 at this point.
That's awesome. So what did you learn in the island life? What did you learn? Like, let's talk a little bit about the differences in what it's like to work for yourself. Do you even consider it work? Like, I don't work, I get to do. what I love and I get paid for it, right? Thank
Yeah.
God I get to be me and I get paid for it. So let's start with like, what are the differences between working for somebody else and working for yourself?
I
Let's
always say
start.
this. So I'll use this as a stat. When I had my job, I had 40 really good days a year. There were 26 paydays, right? There was raise day, there was bonus day, there was stock vesting day and equity award day. And then there were about 10 days a year that I would take off just for me. There's more days than that,
Yeah.
but it was like doctor's appointment or something with the kids, whatever. Like, so 40 good days a year. And then 325 days a year, including especially Sundays. When you don't have a job you love, Sundays suck. It's just a countdown to the inevitable misery. But those 325 days a year were just ugh or awful. Now I
Yeah.
flip it. I have 40 absolutely terrifying days a year as a solo entrepreneur. Just
Let's
what
go
it
through
could be
those super quick.
it could be real or perceived, right? It could be just my brain like, oh my God, if this doesn't work and then this happens, and what if I have to get a job? And what if I fail? And I'm awake at night and I'm just sweating and terrified 40 days a
Yeah.
year. But to your point, the other 325, Sundays in particular, like sometimes I'm like, all right, get me through Sunday. There's some things I really want to get to tomorrow on Monday that I'm excited to get into, like work, as you said. There's sometimes that some things feel like a grind, like anything, but the difference to me is that I have the majority of my days are doing things that lift me up, that fulfill me, and that more importantly are in true service to others. Meaning, like I'm not trying to be in service per se, but just by me leaning into who I am, my gifts, and aligning with the best use of me, it serves others. I didn't have that in my old job. There were elements that I could like carve out, like, oh, today I get to mentor so and so, and I enjoyed that hour, that 1 hour in a week. But the rest of it was just fighting email and dealing with it and all of that. So that's the biggest stat change. The other thing I'll say real quick is email. When I had my corporate job, and I think anybody with a corporate job can relate to this, like everything's email. Send me an email on that. Did you see the email? We're going to put an email together. Email. I was in email. That's all I did all day. So when I
Uh,
quit, I hired a VA in the Philippines for like $5 an hour to handle my inbox. Doesn't do it all, but does a lot of it because I did not want to
yeah.
be in email anymore after I left my job. So those are the two big differences I would speak to working on
Yeah.
my own.
In each of my companies, I have an email address personally, right, for each of my companies, but I also have an assistant who's a virtual assistant for all of them. I don't read DMs, I don't read emails. I couldn't tell you the last time I read one. I do have email meetings. So if there is something that is super important, like contracts and things like that, then I personally
Sure.
have to read and sign. Yeah, we'll have an email meeting and I'll read through it and I sign it. Other than that, they're handled it 99% of the time.
Yeah, that's nice.
And I absolutely love it. I do check Instagram though for all of you. Instagram is the only place that you find me personally. But yes, everywhere else I have VAs. So what does your days look like nowadays?
So I wake
Monday.
up. I wake up no alarm. That's my big thing. I don't have an alarm.
Oh
Never,
my gosh, that's amazing.
never, never. Unless I have an early flight or something. But yeah, no
Yeah.
alarms.
What time
We get the
does your day start? Like naturally,
um
what time do you wake up and start work?
6:30, 7, somewhere in that range, somewhere between 6:30 and
Okay.
7. We get the kids ready for school. We take them in. They're there by 8 o'clock. My wife and I go to the gym at 8:30. We have a trainer there that we meet. So 5 days a week we have him. We're
Oh,
back
that's
here by
awesome.
9:45 or so, and then my day really starts around 10 a.m. So 10 a.m. is when meetings start, that sort of thing, and it could be anything from content that I'm creating, videos I'm filming, calls I have to be on, something in my community emerge that I have to dive into, something like that. But usually from like 10 to 4, 5 is when the bulk of my day is. And then every so often I have some evening commitments that I put myself on. Like Tuesday evenings, we have a community call that I do at 8 p.m. Eastern. But that's kind of the day, 10 to 5.
That's awesome. And how much time do you feel like you get to spend with the family from five
As much
o'clock
as I
on
want
and
to.
every single weekend? Yeah.
Yeah, as much as I want to. And sometimes I'll be honest, I borrow from them because I'm really excited about something I'm working on or I want to get something done. So I'm like, I'm going to work late tonight. But again, work in air quotes, I'm just, I
Yeah.
can't wait to get into it. And it's like such a distraction, not like a day job where it's like, if I don't get this done, my boss, it's more like, I want to get this done because I can't think of anything else right now.
Yeah, because
So
you're so excited.
as much as I want, as much as I want. So weekends, yeah, it's all kids. We do bedtime with our kids every night. I have goals around that to do at least 6 bedtimes a week with them. Yeah, as much as I want.
I love it. So what I noticed though, as much as I got to know you personally, which is not much, right? But I got to know you in kind of that corporate investor kind of Jamie.
Yep.
And then you moved to the islands and you actually have a really good humor and you create really good social media content about the island life. So when did you let And I guess let me ask you, which one is the real Jamie, right? The corporate
Yeah.
Jamie that I met, which I think I know the answer to it, or the
Yeah.
Jamie on Instagram today. So which one is the real Jamie?
Oh, definitely on Instagram. Definitely
Instagram.
yeah, the ability to, it's funny, like I thought when I quit my job I could let my personality show, but I still felt the judgment of those I worked with. In fact, I had maybe people do this, like I had a person who was not judging me. I haven't even talked to her as a corporate peer or whatever, but in my mind she's watching and she's going to be laughing at me. So it would inhibit me from doing things. And it's funny, at one point she reached out randomly. It was like, man, I'm so inspired by what you're doing. And that kind of relieved it, even though she did nothing to judge. Sue, her name was, she did nothing to ever judge me. But I created this, I don't know, what do they say? Straw man of her as like the judge of me. So as the years, 3 years now that I've been out of the job have gone by, I've gotten less and less worried about what I put out there having a repercussion, because I had 21 years of corporate conditioning around that. So what you
Yeah.
see now, funny, informative, inspirational, or try to be feeling emotional guy, like that's me.
So what allowed you finally to let Jamie loose?
I think the work I did, especially with the ego. It's funny you said that before. Like, if you were to put a goal across the room and ask me to go get it, ask my ego to go get it, my ego would beat me to it every day of the
Oh
week.
yeah,
And
every
and
time.
I beat that thing down. I beat my ego down for all of my life. Ego's bad. Ego's the enemy. Ego's this, that, and the other. Right. And it's again, it's true, but I took it too far. So when I got comfortable with the idea that, wait a minute, I put out a lot of content. People praise me for things. In the past, it's like, oh, thank you. No, but the ego, actually, the relationship with the ego allowed me to become a better receiver. So I can acknowledge I have some gifts. I can acknowledge that I made a difference with somebody, or that they got something from a meeting or content that I created. So I think when I understood that my ego is something I need to partner with, harness, because you can easily let it take over, and then your ego is not your amigo, like you said. But by doing that, by understanding the line to toe with my ego, it became okay to satiate it. And when became okay to satisfy my ego, just like I would my needy kid or whatever, while keeping balance with being helpful and not just being egotistical, that was the line that I feel like I was able to walk. And I cross it back and forth, don't get me wrong, to become a better receiver. And by becoming a better receiver, I was more willing to just sort of allow myself to be shown to the world, if that makes sense.
Do you remember the first video that you realized, oh, I'm kind of funny and I actually enjoy this and I don't care what people think? Do you know what the first video was?
First, no, but the one that really hit. So down here in the Dominican Republic, car washes are, I mean, everything, barbershops. I mean, you could add 3 or 4 different things, but car washes in particular. I remember this a few years ago. I went with my wife's uncle in a city locally here, like very Dominican city. What most Americans would picture, like, isn't it third world? Like that's that city, right? I
Yeah.
go with him. He doesn't speak English. I don't speak Spanish, to go play pool at the car wash. And I'm like, that's weird. So anyway, we hop in the car, we go to this car wash. He throws the keys to a kid to wash it, and we go into this like bar, and there's pool tables. There's a waitress at each pool table just pouring beer for whoever's playing at that pool. And we were there for like 8 hours. I was trashed. I remember being in the bathroom in the middle of where there's no English speaking people, and some guy walks up next to me and says something to me in Spanish, funny, like, you're probably like, woof, rough night. I had no idea. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't speak. And he's looking at me like, who the hell? Where'd you come from? But
Did you get lost?
anyway, that moment, years later, flash forward to a piece of content I did after I moved here. It was simply me at the door, and there's music. I didn't say a word. And the text said, going to the car wash in Dominican Republic. I'm kind of waving. I leave the door, and then the door pops back open, me coming in with my hat backwards and a bottle of rum. And it said 6 hours later. It was like 6 seconds, the whole video. It's over 2 million views at this point, and it absolutely exploded my reach here locally. So that
Yeah.
one was where I was like, all right, this stuff that's funny to me, like it was funny. Like, oh, by the way, at the end of that night at the car wash, my wife's uncle hopped in the car and drove us home, trashed. And it's just kind of what it is here,
Just-
right? So that was what was funny to me. And then I presented it in a way that was really funny. And a lot of people that understood got it. That was probably I'm actually not too, I'm pretty funny.
I love it. So that reminds me when one of the first time we went home to Romania with my husband, right? My husband's American, I'm from Romania. So we go home. My parents don't speak a lick of English. My husband doesn't speak a lick of Hungarian, right? I go to get my hair done. I leave Dwayne, my husband, with my dad and my uncle. So they go fishing. Okay, so
Yeah.
mind you, there's like one pond at home that has fish in it. You're not famous for fishing in Romania, right? So they go fishing in the on the way back. I think first of all, I don't even know how they communicated all day, but they kept each other alive, right? Like they stuck
Yeah.
together. So on the way home, they decide to go to the bar. They get a shot. While in Romania, the shots are like a water glass, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
like this much, like half a cup of water, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he gets the
Shot.
shot while him being American, right? Like he bottom up, like he thought it's bottom. Well, at home they just sip it. So they say cheers. They take a little sip. Dwayne goes,
Boom.
chugs the whole thing. I mean, they get home doing it knackered, right? And I'm like, what have you guys been doing? Like, I left you for 2 hours, right, to go get the hair done. But that's his, early Romania trip too. So he
Yeah.
understands your pain with the different cultures. But I think it's beautiful when you mix cultures together.
Agreed.
So now then you have this like big existence in the Dominican island life, right? Like,
Mhm.
do you monetize that? Do you do it for fun? Like, explain me
Yeah.
that, because like I do everything on social media. There are certain things I monetize, certain things I do just because I love it. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, yeah, it's beginning to monetize. My whole thing on social for years has been
Mhm.
just sharing the journey, right? It's less about
Yeah.
what would be interesting, and I'm just going to share it. Of course, comedy, you have to conjure up the idea, but it was something I just wanted to share, like kind of part of the journey. So I've been doing that for a long time. Being here, so when I quit my job, I shared it. When I moved here, I shared it, and then just this is where it kind of hit. Like the sharing the journey, it got a very niche audience and expanded. So my audience has become unintentionally a lot of Dominican Americans for fun. I like to share on social. The
Yeah.
monetization part now though is I'm understanding the value of me being here on the ground in an area that's highly desirable as far as investment, especially by Dominican Americans whose family moved or they moved to the States a long time ago and they've made a good living, 80, 100, 2, 3, $400,000 a year, and they're looking to buy here. Their problem is like, I don't know the right investment, the right location, the right realtor. Who do I trust? And so I've become that connection point for them. So I have a realtor down here that I've vetted, I trust. I'm referring him a lot of business. In the last month, I think I've referred him, I don't know, 80 or 100 leads. There's
Wow.
two so far that have already gone under contract and will close, and I'll get a percentage of the commission. There's no licensing need for that here. He needs to be licensed, but to pay me a percentage of his commission, I don't need to be. So that's one monetization angle. I'm getting hit up by a lot of local brands, stores, like the Dominican version of, I guess, like Target. It's called Unidos. They reached out, like, we'd love to do some sponsored posts with you. So there's potential in that, although I'm being very careful with just like selling myself to anybody that wants to do it. And then honestly, the more inspiring monetization that I've done with this, we did a lot of people asked to meet. If I walk around, it's weird. If I walk around the Dominican, my wife jokes with me, like, you're Dominican famous. A lot of people want pictures and they meet me and they're shaking my hand. It's very strange.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
but because of that, a lot of people say, "Hey, can we meet? I'd love to get coffee." I'm like, I can't. But let me do this mixer. I'll do this little like networking event. It was at a local mall, at a restaurant in a local mall. But I'm like, but you got to donate to this cause, a local cause that if you donate, then I'll tell you where we're going to be, and that's where you can come. And we did this little fun, no agenda mixer, raised like $4,000. It put 8 kids through school who were previously in human trafficking situations down here
Oh.
for an entire year. So like that monetization, if you will, the ability to influence is more where I am. I'm not looking to directly monetize my audience at this time. There might be products or community or something I can build with it, but I have Emerge. I have Gobundance Emerge, so there's some crossover. People can go join that, and that's a business of mine. But right now, it's more affiliate relationships with realtors, building one with a lawyer, title company, those sorts of things where I can refer people and take a percentage or a fee, and then maybe some brand deals or sponsored posts would be the next level, and then later might be course or community or Patreon or whatever it might be.
So let's talk about Gobundance, because that's how
Yeah.
you and me. Well, we technically met through M1, and then I learned
Yep.
about Gobundance. But let's explain M1 and then go into Gobundance and how can people find it. Actually, for the listeners, you can find Gobundance at gobundanceemerge.com, and you can find Jamie at the Jamie Gruber on Instagram. So you can check out his funny Dominican videos, Dominican life videos. I absolutely love it. And it was actually, I remember seeing that on Instagram first, and I'm like, hold on, that's Jamie. That's Jamie from Michigan. I'm like, what is he? So then I started looking at, not judging, but I'm like, there was a totally different Jamie on
Yeah.
Instagram than who I met in person, right? But I absolutely love that you live your freedom, your free life today. So tell me about M1 and how did you become a part of it?
The M1 I joined through Gobundance. So at the time, I guess I didn't really realize it. My net worth was like right at the $1 million mark, maybe a touch under. So I'm like, oh, I can't join Gobundance, which required $1 million in net worth, but they had this program M1, which was like a Gobundance for future millionaires, if you will. So I joined it within about a year. I realized like, my net worth's ticked over the million mark. So I joined Gobundance. And then at some point, I think the guy who founded M1 Rock and the founders of Gobundance they said, hey, we're going to kind of become separate things. So M1 sort of disconnected as the official undercard of Gobundance, if you will. And this is about 2 years into my time in Gobundance. And being in Gobundance around, and I'm on the men's group. There's a women's group and a men's group. In the men's group around these guys that represent, the Imagine When friends who represent who I'm becoming, who made like this seem possible. Like, wow, people here like live in Spain. They live in Costa Rica. They have nomadic lifestyles. It just became normal. So I started to, I don't know, lean into, wow, there's new levels of normal here. Like, oh, you can hire a housekeeper full time, like things I wouldn't think about in my W-2 job. They would feel like expenses. Oh, I'll mow my own lawn. But then I get, these guys like, well, if you mow your own lawn, you're costing yourself this. I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way. So anyway, I was learning and growing. I had met partners there. I syndicate deals with a couple of partners I met in Gobundance. So my world started to explode simply with the connections and accountability I got. So I went to the founders and I said, hey, what is the number one thing you're working on right now? And they said, oh, we want to we want a new M1, essentially. We want to call it a merge, but we need a partner. Like, yeah, I'll do it. Insurance exec guy, I'll build a mastermind. So about 2 years in, I came up with the concept for what it would look like, very similar to Gobundance, the regular Gobundance, if you will. And I built it. And so we've had it for about 3 years now. But what Gobundance, what M1, all of it is honestly like, it's funny when I talk to people, they want to know like the sticker. I say that to them, like, I can't tell you the value of an accountability pod or a micro tribe or a Facebook group. Like, don't try to MSRP this thing. Like, okay, Gobundance is 12,500. How much of that is like pod? How much of it's like, no, here's what I say to people that are looking to join a mastermind, especially Gobundance. It's, listen, you have purchased a home or live in a building in a neighborhood, in a community for a reason. You pay the money there because there's value in the people that you're surrounded with and there's value in the amenities available to you. Doesn't mean you use all the amenities all the time. The pool in your building, maybe you use it twice a year, but access and the people around you are what's important. So you pay your rent or you pay your property taxes and your mortgage every year. Might get sick sometimes, can't use all the beautiful amenities. But the point is, over the course of a year, you have value from who you're surrounding yourself with. That's what I look at this as. Like, Gobundance provides you structures. Gobundance Emerge provides structures for you to network and interact. Of course, you're spending money on it. But I think the bigger value or the better mindset is, let me move into this neighborhood. In my case, with Gobundance, the membership that I'm in is with millionaire men as my neighbors who want to be the best version of themselves in life, who think big and challenge me. It doesn't mean I hang out with them every day. Like my life is busy at times and I'm less connected or less involved than other times. But I always look at it like a mastermind. A real mastermind is not a program. A real mastermind is a neighborhood that you move into for the same reason you live in the house or the apartment that you live in. That's the best example of what I could think to explain what a mastermind and Gobundance in particular are all about.
Yeah. So it is Emerge then to the becoming millionaires?
Correct. Yep.
Did I understand it? Okay.
So it's co-ed. So we have a men's and a women's tribe. The women's tribe gets a little complex because the men increase their minimum. So men is now 2 million plus. Women is still 1 million to go into the Gobundance men or women's groups. Emerge is everybody below that. So men under 2 million, women under 1 million is what Emerge is.
Got it. So I got into M1 because I figured out how to make money. But this one specific year, I remember doing, and I made 430,000, and we were $89,000 in credit card debt. And I was like, okay, how do you make $500,000 and be $100,000 in credit card debt? Like, how did we manage to do that? Clearly, there's something about money that we haven't figured out, right?
Yeah.
And most importantly, mindset. Like, that's when I started researching my relationship with money, right? Like, why are we in this situation? We clearly put ourselves into that situation because of the knowledge that we hold or the beliefs that we have or the actions that we take or we don't take sometimes, right? So then I was like, okay, I need to figure this out. Like, I need to, just like anything else in life, you're going to put your head down, you're going to figure it out. I need to put my head down and figure out what is my relationship with money and why am I self-sabotaging? Like, we're making all this money, but it's going somewhere, right? And so I joined M1 right at that same time. I was in Rock Thomas's podcast, and after the podcast, he reached out to me. He's like, "You need to join M1," and I'm like, "What is M1?" And at that time, I was just was getting busy, right? And I felt like my head was spinning, and why, like, I have time to join a group now and start studying, like I'm going back to college, right? But he said,
Yeah.
no, 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 you really need it. But even though he didn't know about my credit card situation at the time, right? But ended up joining, and really M1 what made me realize and start tracking the money,
Hmm.
right? Like I was so busy making it, and I never slowed down enough to have my spreadsheets and figure out where is it coming from and how much is coming from which business, and should I continue doing this or should I spend my time over here, and are we paying our bills on time? And oh, by the way, we have 3 Netflix accounts. God knows how long we had it, because never slowed down to know that we are paying for 3 Netflix, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what M1 taught us. And so I got ourselves out of the $89,000 credit card debt, I think, in 4.5 months,
Mm,
and
amazing.
became a millionaire in M1. I think by the time I finished the year, we were at 3.2 million for our net
Wow.
worth. Now,
Amazing.
I'll be honest with you, though, I had a little chip on my shoulder, and I didn't join Gobundance because I don't like the fact that it's separating men from women. I believe that we can do it all.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was my reasoning of, I do have a lifetime membership in M1, and that would naturally be the next step. But I just don't see the need to separate genders, because I believe we can both learn from each other.
Sure, and there's crossover between men's and women's in some aspects. So there's these micro tribes in Gobundance. That's like a short-term rental, for instance. That's a mixed micro tribe between men and women. Podcasters micro tribe is a mixed micro tribe between men and women. So sort of these like mini masterminds within the mastermind that are topic based. But the reason I get you completely. The reason I like the separation is we actually had this discussion at an event in Atlanta, because there was talk about at the highest level, which is champion, 10 million plus net worth, making it co-ed. The concern was for the men in that room, me included, was, and maybe it's the culture we've created. Like there's places we go with each other that aren't, our wives don't even, get that version of us sometimes. Like there's things that we express to one another as men that we would feel very uncomfortable to not be as expressive if there's women other than our wives in that room, if that makes sense. And I don't know
Yeah.
on the women, I can't speak for women, but my understanding from Mandy and some of the other women on the women's side is that they like the ability to have discussions that are relevant to women. Because again, GoBundance is more than about business. I always say it's like business, mixing business and pleasure are required in GoBundance. So you're
Yeah.
right on investments, passive investing, podcasting, short term, sure. Like there's no difference there. But when it comes to like the dad's micro tribe that I'm in with other dads, like there's things that
Yeah.
if there were moms in that room as well, the dynamic changes. It just
Oh, yeah,
does.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
No,
so when you get
I recommend there's a time. So I recommend, I'm not recommending anything. I believe,
yeah,
I
yeah,
believe that there's a time and place for everything, right? But like the masterminding portion of it could be together, right? Like the investing, the podcast, the mindset, the
sure.
thing that is generic, either gender can do. Absolutely. Like being a mom's group and you're being a father, it just doesn't make sense. Right? Like,
Yeah,
talking being a husband versus being a wife is just a different role, right? Of course, it doesn't make sense. But blending certain portions of it, I love that idea. So now, what else do you do? Like, how do you make your money today? Do you still manage all of those real estate? Do you have a management company? Did you sell them all? Like, what happened with your
yeah.
41 doors when you
Sold
moved
them.
to the
Sold them
islands?
all. So two of them, one of them went full cycle. It was the plan to exit. I was a smaller partner in that. We had 5 units in New York, and New York just got weird with their tenant landlord law. So we sold those off. And we had one property in Pinckney, Michigan that we really liked, 16 units. We had a partner on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The partner wanted to exit. He had some financial stress. He wanted to sell it. Me, it was just me and him. And man, I sometimes I battle with this. I was like, I should have bought him out, but we ended up selling it. That was the one that I would have held if we held any of them. But my investments are all, I'm a general partner, and I have, of course, limited partner shares. I paid for limited partner shares in a company called Quantum Capital. And we invest in mostly Denver, Austin, a little bit in LA, but not as much because of their laws as well. So we've done, I think, 8 or 10 deals in the last year and a half or so, more in the last year ago than the last half year or so because of
Yeah.
interest rates and the environment that we're in. So that's my investment portfolio. I really don't make anything on
So
that
they're
per se.
mostly like syndications then, like multi.
Syndications, yeah.
Yeah.
30, 40,
Okay.
50 unit, 200, 250,000 a door, prime time, downtown, value add, C-class properties in A-class neighborhoods. So they're very specific, and the lead partner has been executing the strategy for about 25 years. So like me and one other guy tagged on with him, and we're partners in Quantum Capital. So that's the investment side. And honestly, I don't really make any money off of that. It's more like, that's almost like my retirement.
Yeah,
that's
you
my
part
investment
your
vehicle.
money, and then eventually it's gonna pay
Correct.
you,
Correct.
or
And then I
pays you
get free
quarterly,
shares with TP.
probably. Yeah, pays you
What's that?
quarterly. Pays you quarterly.
Yeah,
Do
yeah,
they
yeah. We
pay
get a
out
quarterly
quarterly?
payout, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's not much. You know,
yeah,
I'm 50,000 in each deal, and you know, it's a few thousand a year, right? So it's nothing
yeah.
crazy.
That's not what you're
Um,
gonna be living off of. Yeah,
no, no, no. But like the more of that is like once it exits and you roll that money into the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. Like that's how you build wealth. The My income. So I always say, like, it's funny. It was one of those things that I struggle when I meet people on a plane and I'm flying here alone. They're like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, and I would always like, oh, I'm a real estate investor and I have a community. So I just say this now, I'm a podcaster because that's what I love doing. I love
yeah.
podcasting. So my podcast, Tribe of Millionaires, has gotten to about 170,000 downloads a month, which is awesome. And we interview really, really interesting high level entrepreneurs, ones that have been on all the big shows, Rogan and Lex Friedman. And we have the Andrew Bustamante's the most viewed, most listened to Lex Friedman episode ever. And he was a guest of mine, and we actually stay in touch. So the podcast is the top of it for me. From the podcast comes the Gobundance communities, which I monetize, obviously. So, you know, people listen to the podcast, they join Gobundance, I get paid there. We have events within Gobundance that's sort of separate, so that's another payment stream. And then the bottom of that funnel, if you will, is investors are gained for our stuff in Denver. You know, for that part of it. So my monetization structure is the podcast. I don't really make money on the podcast per se. I don't sponsor it or anything like that. Podcast, and then down the line, and now adding on this sort of, you know, affiliate income here in the Dominican. So we'll see where that goes.
That's awesome. So, give me one more time the name of your podcast.
Yep, Tribe of Millionaires. Tribe of Millionaires is the name of it.
Love it. Just so everybody can listen in. So we are close to the end of the hour. I want to ask you a little bit of like, quick questions.
Sure.
And let's say quick answers if we can make them quick. What is the biggest lesson that took you the longest to learn?
Not to care what other people think.
Oh, yeah. What are the habits that form you who you are today?
The habits.
Or maybe just one good habit that you have that you feel like that's one good reason why you are successful.
That's a great question. I would say ready, fire, aim. I'll call that a habit. So I don't think too much about action. I don't care if it breaks. I'm going to just do and see, as opposed
Yeah.
to figure out if it's the right move and worry about it. So I don't analyze. I think just taking action. Book the flight on August 23rd. I just chose that date. Now we're moving, right? Like so that's what
Yeah.
I mean. Like the habit is just like act first, think later.
I always say I jump and then I build a plane on the way down.
Exactly.
Next one, what is success means to you? Like, how do you describe, how do you feel? When do you feel successful?
Yeah, when I have choices, when I have the ability to choose what I want to do, when I want to do it, where I want to do it, with whom I want to do it, that to me is success. It's not money. It's having choices.
I love it. Who inspires you?
Right now, one individual that inspires me right now, I would have to say, God, I feel like there's somebody I'm not thinking of that's very obvious in my brain if I think about it for a second. But I'm really inspired by content creators. So Alex Hormozy comes to mind, inspired by
Yeah.
what he's done. There's a guy in my world named Throp. He's sort of similar to me in Jamaica. He's an American guy that moved to Jamaica. He has Jamaican roots. And he and I have been talking a lot and actually are doing some collaborations. And I'm really inspired by his really basic feedback, which was instead of creating content, create community. So that inspires me to say, like, wow, you know what? That's a better way to be on this whole social thing than just like, let me dance on TikTok. So I'll go with those two, Hormozy and Throp.
Love it. Do you like reading books?
I do, yeah.
What is a book that changed your life that you would say every entrepreneur should read?
10X is Easier Than 2X by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. Incredible book. Incredible book. Easy read. First half is better than the second, admittedly, but 10X is easier than 2X.
And is there a mantra or motto or quote that kind of formed your life? Like you read it one time, you're like, oh,
Yeah, right now, I think it's, I butcher this. People fear uncertainty more than they value happiness. So people fear uncertainty more than they value happiness. In the context of quitting a job, it's like, I'd rather be unhappy. I don't value happiness as much. as I'm afraid of losing this thing that I'm not happy with, right? But because I have certainty. So, or people value certainty more than they do happiness, something like that.
And then very last one, the world get to know you from like through the lenses, right? But if someone lives with you, what would they say that makes you like a unique quality or quirk that just kind of makes you so unconventional that it kind of makes Jamie Jamie?
Oh, that's a great question. It's somewhere, it's something with my energy. So I'm actually more introverted than most people would think. I actually really enjoy time to myself, but the moment that I have to be on, it just something turns on in me, and I can, yeah. So something to do with my energy. I can go forever when I'm in an inspired place, even slightly inspired place. I can go and go hard forever on whatever it is I'm doing.
Yeah, I always say I'm a paid extrovert.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I can turn it on for money, but if there's a party and you ask me to go party or be at home by myself and watch a documentary, home alone with the documentary.
Same. Agreed completely. People
All
don't
day, every
believe
day.
that, but that's me. Absolutely.
So, Jamie, let's repeat it one more time. What are the best way for people to get a hold of you? So it's the
Yep.
Gobundance website, which is would you just say?
GoBundanceEmerge.com is the site if you want to
Thank you.
apply and see what membership is all about. But yeah, you said it earlier. It's funny. Like Instagram is where I build community. I'm very active there. I try to reply. I get so many freaking DMs nowadays. I know you do too. It's
Yeah.
hard to see them all, but at the Jamie Gruber on Instagram, I'll do my best. I promise.
Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for sharing your entrepreneurial journey and taking that leap to freedom. And hopefully, we helped a lot of people who are just sitting in a job that is just killing their soul to take that step towards freedom to be you and get paid to be you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
See ya.
Bye, Jamie.
Ready to elevate your mindset? Now it's time for What Would Gogo Do?
Okay. And today's question comes from Emily Schneider, from Emily at Emily Schneider E at the end. How do I stop caring about other people's opinion? Oh, this is one of my favorites. So, okay, I'm going to take you back a little bit into my childhood so you understand why I think the way I think, right? So, number one, growing up in Eastern Europe, my parents never told me they loved me. There was no hugs, feelings. There was not a touchy-feely feelings kind of relationship, right? So because I didn't get that from my parents and I didn't get that from my family, I had to learn to love myself because that was the only source of love that I could so-set control. So I just learned to love myself. So when you learn to love yourself, you really just don't care about what other people think because you don't need their love. You don't need their approval. You don't need their opinion about you, right? So I like to say, and here's my mic drop for you, I will start caring about your opinion as soon as I can deposit it into my bank account. Mic drop. So, can I send my child to college on your opinion? Oh, I can't. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. Can I build a house in the ocean in Florida on your opinion? Oh, well, I guess it doesn't matter. If I can't use it as down payment, does it matter? No, it doesn't. It doesn't affect my life whatsoever. The faster you learn to love yourself and accept yourself for who you are, the faster you get over what anybody thinks of you because it doesn't matter.
You get paid for the hour what you bring to the hour. Or in other words, the fastest way for you to earn more is by learning more. GoGet'em Webinars is your chance to learn from those who have walked the talk. Gogo invites all of the top performers in the industry to guide you through your success journey. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. The roadmap is already laid out. If you haven't figured out how to make money in your sleep yet, you're not running a business. You're stuck in a job. Join GoGet'em Webinars to learn how to earn passively and have your money doing all the heavy lifting so you don't have to. Explore more at GoGet'emWebinars.com.
Thanks for joining Gogopreneur. Keep that go-getter spirit alive. Until next time, go get 'em.